Spotlight is proudly sponsored by HEC Media, St. Louis's home for arts, education, and culture.
Today on Spotlight, a St. Louis company strengthening the supply of U.S.-made pharmaceutical ingredients. And then a travel bucket list turns into a popular Instagram page and bestseller. Plus, why Eurasian tree sparrows were transferred to St. Louis over 150 years ago. But first, an inside look at what a conductor does when they're standing in front of the symphony. It's Sunday and you're watching the multiple Emmy Award-winning Spotlight.
My name is Stéphane Donève, and I am a musician, I am a conductor, I'm also a father and a husband, and I'm the music director of the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra. Conducting is basically trying to create, a connection with your energy and give some objective information about the pulse, about the speed, etc., about dynamics, but more than that, to just share together something really mysterious, which is, the power of music. As a conductor, you can do really many things. Well, I know for many people, this is a bit mysterious. They see us move our arms and it seems that everything is easy and the orchestra just plays by itself. But I think we do have indeed a role. It's a collaboration. And here in St. Louis, we have one of the finest orchestras in the world, and the musicians are very talented. And yes, of course, they have their own personality. They prepare their own score, for individual instruments. And so they perform it, at home, they practice it to master all the technical difficulties. Always try my best to listen and take from the musician what they propose me. Let's say there's no big rules to follow, and there are some very unorthodox ways sometimes to conduct. But the most important thing is that the orchestra just understands what you have in your heart, what you have in your brain, and sometimes it's almost telepathy. And you're like a chef, you have these amazing ingredients, and so you feel like, well, yeah, this is great, but actually I think I should maybe add a little bit of spice here, and maybe this should be at a different temperature, and maybe we should, rest this, and etc., to use all the forces, all the ingredients, and put them together to create something, that is more than just the sum of its parties, but something that is unique collectively. I love this baton, by the way, because it's very well balanced. Look, you see that? So it's just the center of gravity is here, so it's very easy and light to maneuver. So this baton is just an extension of my arm in order for the musician to see from far away.
So it's like Harry Potter finding the wand finds them? Or...
Yeah, actually you could ask Mr. Ollivander which baton is the right one, and somehow actually it's true that there is, I think, a type of baton that seems to respond to you and create more the magic. You have two hands, and usually the right hand is usually used to kind of give a pulse, what we call the tempo. You usually mainly give what we call the rhythm here, and there is different methods. So there's in one beat, or two beats, which is 1 2 1 2, or 3 beats, which is 1 2 3 1 2, 3, 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5. Four, 5, and then it becomes a bit complicated because people have different way to signify the more complicated beating pattern. And then with the left hand, I can modulate live. So for instance, if I wanted them to start, let's say, to play, but let's say here to sing Frère Jacques with crescendo, which means to go from soft to loud, I would just, say my left hand would help to say, let's start soft. Frère Jacques, and I can have a kind of gesture showing that I want the intensity and the volume to go up, and then Frère Jacques would be a diminuendo, right? And of course, more than those very basic things, like loud, soft, short, long, etc., there is a kind of intangible emotion, style, connection with the music that you can offer. It does change a lot when I have actually audience, and for the orchestra too, because we exchange this energy. It's real. We give and we receive, and it's very clear that it's a communion, and the vibrations that we are creating is certainly the shortest way from one heart to another, and it's just unite us somehow, and it creates a dialogue. An audience can inspire us to be even more passionate, even more intense, just the way they listen to us. It's quite magic.
For more St. Louis stories, subscribe to the HEC YouTube channel. Connect STL from HEC Media.
Generic drug shortages in hospitals have been a persistent problem, according to the American Hospital Association. The American Medical Association recently declared drug shortages to be an urgent public health crisis and a national security threat.
This year in April, 320 drug shortages, highest it's ever been in our country's history.
One solution is in St. Louis.
So the API Innovation Center is a pharmaceutical nonprofit in which we're specializing in how can we find creative, innovative ways to reshore genetic medicines that are in shortage to the United States. I tell people I work for the API Innovation Center, and the first question they ask is, what's an API? And so API stands for active pharmaceutical ingredient, the part of the drug that has its therapeutic effect, core component.
And at the core of drug shortages, manufacturing of APIs. It's a problem Darren McCam is helping to solve as the Director of Government and External Affairs for API Innovation Center.
Only 5% of the largest API facilities are in the United States. 95% outside the United States in places like India and China. Generic drugs, 83% of the top 100 drugs have no U.S. API source. And so we see vulnerabilities, we see shortages all over. I mean, you have cancer drugs, oncolytics, we have the cardio drugs, all the drugs across the spectrum of generic drugs. You see news stories after news stories of patients not being able to get the critical medicines that they need.
So, API Innovation Center received a $14 million federal grant, an investment to generate local pharmaceutical manufacturing for national security and supply chain reasons.
To bring back critical key starting materials and APIs for some of our most vulnerable drugs in the United States. Already have ready to go albuterol for inhalers, so asthma. Lorazepam treats anxiety. The R&D process, all that is happening right in our backyard here at the University of Missouri, St. Louis.
Now, the Missouri Department of Economic Development is providing more than $9.5 million in new funding for this new partnership of the API Innovation Center and the University of Missouri, St. Louis. They work together to reshore the active pharmaceutical ingredient, or API, production.
How do we bring the production of these critical medicines back to the United States? Well, we invest in advanced manufacturing technologies. It's how can we be more efficient in the production of these critical medicines? Number two, we use a different, we call a Missouri model, a different approach to how we actually develop the drug from the R&D, the research and development component of it, to the final drug product using we call it a consortium, a partner network, where we can leverage everyone's individual kind of talents so they can specialize in what they do best. And as we move the drug through the entire process, but also understanding which drugs are in shortage, which ones are kind of the highest of need, and what can we do with current technologies and where we can make an investment.
The API Innovation Center is getting ready for the grand opening of its new state-of-the-art lab in the Science Learning Building at UMSL on February 24th.
We are going to invest in lab space there to work alongside your scientists to produce the new chemical pathways for this medicine. We just need you to do what you do best. So everyone's just doing what they do best. We make the investments so we're able to bring the drug from the beginning stages to the finished drug product, reducing the costs at each stage for each one of those parts of the supply chain.
The new investment will help position Missouri as a pharmaceutical manufacturing hub.
WashU just did a study, an economic impact study of what is the return on investment for the state of Missouri and the economic impact of us producing the API to finished drug product. And they came to the conclusion about $51 million per finished drug product. So API, finished drug product, $51 million. Right now we're on the pathway, and UMSL being a key part of that, within the next 5 years doing 25. So you translate that across 25, that's about $306 million of economic impact that we will be bringing here to the St. Louis region.
HEC Media, recognized, celebrated, honored time and again for excellence in the industry. HEC Media has been bringing home the hardware for over a decade. Arts and education to author talks, magazine shows and documentaries, individual craft achievements to overall excellence. Find all of the award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
Wes Anderson films carry a certain kind of charm. They feature carefully crafted cinematography that transports viewers into new and surreal worlds. But imagine finding real places you could visit with that same unmistakable aesthetic. Pastel facades, vintage quirkiness, and perfectly framed views.
This all started as a travel bucket list, and that was something that was for me and Amanda personally. And I was looking around on the internet for where we might go next, started finding these places that looked as though they could be plucked from the world of Wes Anderson.
And it's just captivating to see all the pastels and everything that he has throughout those films. And then when you start looking around, you're like, whoa, I can find these places pretty easily if you're looking correctly at a place.
Authors and travelers Wally and Amanda Koval began their journey with a simple Instagram page, AWA, or Accidentally Wes Anderson. Soon they found themselves at the center of an increasingly expanding community, over 300,000 members in just 1 year.
The Instagram page started in 2017. This was very much a community effort from the very beginning, that we were capturing photos from elsewhere that we had not yet been and pulling them together, doing our own research on them and curating them, so to speak. People started sending us the photos that they felt were AWA.
The Accidentally Wes Anderson hashtag also blew up around the same time. So it was like you could just search that and find like a treasure trove of anywhere in the world that people were hashtagging it or DMing them to us, and then we finally started the submissions through our website.
Their online success led to a book deal, Accidentally Wes Anderson, and it became a New York Times bestseller, earning rave reviews. Their latest book, Accidentally Wes Anderson Adventures, continues to offer readers a visually captivating tour of hidden gems and inspiring destinations, blending stunning imagery with the Koval's knack for storytelling.
If you think of AWA as a dartboard, that bullseye would be a perfectly pink symmetrical hotel in the middle of Prague. And then once you start to kind of explore those outer rungs is when you get into more people. And maybe things that Wes Anderson himself wouldn't necessarily touch on, but things that we're exploring because the community has shown interest in that. It's fun, it's factually based, it's interesting, it's historical, it's architecture, it's interesting people that have done interesting things that you maybe just didn't know about.
Did you ask for approval from Wes Anderson before you published your first book, and this is your second book, or were you going to do it anyway?
Yeah, no, we were not going to do it anyway because so the idea of the book actually happened, an email out of the blue that said accidentally Wes Anderson book with a question mark. That was the subject. And in the body of that email, it said, if this is the Wally Covell I think it is, we went to high school together. And if it's not the Wally Covell I think it is, I'm still very interested in making a book project with you. Well, it turns out that it was a man named Michael Zurban who I had gone to high school with. But he said, I'd love to make a book project. We said, great. And he said, but you have Wes Anderson's approval, right? And we said, no, I've never spoken to the man before. So now we had to go out in the world and find Wes. So we wrote emails, we wrote letters, we did literally everything short of sending a carrier pigeon. And we got in touch with lawyers, which is scary because we very much could have gotten a cease and desist. This is a well-known individual's name that we're just out in the world, in a gray area with. So luckily, after a long period of time, we did not receive a cease and desist, but rather we received a stamp of approval. At the end of the day, he ended up writing the foreword for both of our books.
To find out the one change Wes Anderson himself requested before the book was published, watch the full interview at hecmedia.org. Later on Spotlight, where you'll find a labyrinth in St. Louis and what you're supposed to do there. History Spotlight, brought to you by HEC Media and the Missouri Historical Society.
Hello, I'm Dr. Jody Sowell, president of the Missouri Historical Society in St. Louis, and this is History Spotlight. Over 150 years ago, one man's homesickness led to a colony of 24 Eurasian tree sparrows being transplanted to St. Louis. Public historian Andrew Wonka tells us how this has influenced the St. Louis bird population today.
It's a timeless truth across generations and places that anytime someone has to leave home, heartbreak is sure to follow. One of the ways 19th century wealthy European immigrants were chasing away some of that homesickness when they came to North America was by importing starlings and finches and some of the old world European songbirds that they had known into the new world of North America. Well, one person in 1870s St. Louis that was feeling particularly homesick was German newspaper editor Karl Denzer. If you've got a keen eye, Karl Denzer's name is one you might have noticed on a piece of public artwork around town. He's one of 3 German journalists honored on the Naked Truth statue in Compton Hills small park by the water reservoir. Well, in 1870, Karl Denzer was living in a massive mansion at 1812 Missouri Avenue, just a block away from Lafayette Park's shady groves of trees. The park's birds were just fine, but Denzer was longing to see the European songbirds of his childhood darting around amongst the park's trees. He worked with a local importer to import 24 Eurasian tree sparrows. This is a bird that is beyond unassumingly common in Europe and Asia, but entirely unknown in North America. He happened to get these 24 birds, and in April of 1870, he let them go in Lafayette Park. The birds must have loved their new home just fine because now, 150 years later, St. Louis has a permanent population of Eurasian tree sparrows numbering 15,000, every single one of them a descendant of Karl Denzer's colony of 24 transplants. The Eurasian tree sparrow today is a completely unique local aspect of St. Louis wildlife. Because this bird is a non-migratory species, they cannot be found anywhere else except for about 100 miles north up the Mississippi River Valley to about Hannibal. Because of this, birders from all across the United States have this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that otherwise would require them to get on a transoceanic flight to see this small bird, but instead they can come right here to St. Louis and see it in their own backyards. Birders have been known to schedule intentional layovers at Lambert Airport just to get the chance to see one. Included among them was James Schlesinger, President Richard Nixon's Secretary of Defense, who in 1972 chartered a private helicopter from Lambert to a local high school football field just so he could jump out and get a sight of one of these Eurasian tree sparrows. Today, we would completely frown on something like Karl Denzer releasing 24 foreign birds into our local ecosystem. We fight very aggressively and expensively to control the introduction of new populations into long-established environments. All you have to do is look at creatures like the emerald ash borer or the Asian carp or kudzu vines and see their presence in North America to realize the sort of cascades of environmental damage that can be caused by something even as small as a songbird. While environmentalists and scientists are always keeping a watchful eye, thankfully it appears that the Eurasian tree sparrow's presence is essentially benign, leaving us free to enjoy them. If you want to go out and look for one yourself, you're going to be looking for a small bird about 5.5 inches tall. It has brown wings with a chestnut-colored crown on top of its head. It has pure white cheeks with a small black dot in the center of each. And unlike St. Louis's iconic cardinals, the plumage on both the males and females is identical. It has a shrill metallic chirp, so just listen for that and follow your eyes, and hopefully you'll find one.
Next on History Spotlight, how a famous boat found its untimely demise in St. Louis.
To learn more about the Missouri Historical Society, visit mohistory.org.
HEC Media's mission is to strengthen and promote the education, arts, and cultural communities in the St. Louis metropolitan area. By shining a light on big stories bringing change to St. Louis, covering events important to our city, forging community partnerships, and producing award-winning content on the arts, authors, education, culture, and more. It's all at hecmedia.org.
You can find the stories featured in today's show along with past episodes and more at hecmedia.org/spotlight.
Bellefontaine Cemetery and Arboretum is filled with beautiful works of stone. But one that has been recently added is totally unique in both form and use.
This past year is our 175th anniversary, and it kind of reinvigorated our commitment to looking at funerary art and art on our grounds. And so technically, Robert's installation is our first piece of public art.
The meditation labyrinth that designer Robert Fishbone created for Bellefontaine is a mesmerizing wheel of granite that provides a place for visitors to engage with the natural surroundings while simultaneously looking inward.
So a maze would be something that would have tall walls and do I go left, do I go right? So it's about entertainment and confounding you. A labyrinth, on the other hand, is totally different. It's at ground level. There's only one path, and it always leads you to the center, even though it twists and turns, and which mimics our lives. So it's much more about contemplation and meditation and prayer, as opposed to entertainment.
We're a place of grief and healing and love and process. So I think establishing a labyrinth here just makes sense.
So the first labyrinth I did was at a Central Reform congregation in the Central West End. One of my rabbis asked me, he said, "Hey, would you like to do a labyrinth here?" When it came time to actually install it, 30 members of the congregation installed the bricks in silence. So the installation was with the same intention as walking a labyrinth, which is humility. You're giving up yourself, you're letting go of the world of distractions that we all live in, and seeing what else might there be. I've always been fascinated with forms and shapes and symmetry and geometry. That's one reason why I like these kinds of projects, these bigger technical projects. I like the physicality of it. I like that it's more about problem solving necessarily than the art. I appreciate the art, but I can see that at my core, I'm more of like a builder and a problem solver.
Robert's interest in creating and inventing started in college, where he was studying biochemistry. Once he discovered a passion for art, he began to apply his proficiency in math and science to execute his creative visions.
That technical background feeds right into all this stuff.
A combination of the technical and artistic was the foundation of Robert and his late wife Sarah's company, On the Wall Productions. Started in 1974, it's been bringing the walls of St. Louis and other cities to life with incredible murals for over 50 years. After Sarah's passing, Robert continued creating colorful, imaginative work with their daughter Liza, but is now leaning more towards the contemplative process of creating labyrinths.
My therapist, counselor, nutritionist, meditation teacher, he said my shift from murals to labyrinths was like going from ooh to ah. There's a lot of different designs of labyrinths, but the one that appealed most to the staff at Bellefontaine is called the Santa Rosa design. I got permission from the woman who designed it to be able to use it. The materials we use, which are granite, was inspired by a labyrinth in Boston. So, you're sort of cobbling together different things to arriving at what we felt would be the most appropriate and pleasing design. So this is what the design looks like. I then had to find a company in town who could fabricate the granite, because each piece is custom cut and there's about 160 pieces.
We're a small family-owned company, so it's just something that we've never done. We mostly do kitchens and bathrooms, bars, restaurants, so probably nothing of this magnitude. Thought it was an interesting challenge.
So I gave my design, my layout to Matt at EB Granite, and he went on his computer and really like a wizard, he came out with this layout.
And Matt programs it into the computer system. And then that goes to our saws where it's cut.
If you look at the individual pieces, the measurements are like 46.8375 inches, and you're going, yeah, right, 10,000ths of an inch. It's good that he did that, because as we're putting it together now, the ends are matching up.
I'm just happy to be a part of it, and that it, turned out really nice. People get to enjoy it, it's something we did, so yeah, it's always nice.
And to make sure everything was in alignment, Robert once again wove together science and art.
So I also built a big a dial that connects to the center, and it has marks on it, and there's wheels on both ends, so we can actually wheel it around, and it shows us if we're staying in the right place. We now have this, destination within, Bellefontaine Cemetery and Arboretum for people to come and experience, not just say a grieving process, which it can help with, but just as another way to experience the beauty of the grounds here.
It'll be a resource for the public and the community. Robert has graciously offered to hang around, help us learn all the nuances of a labyrinth.
You're giving yourself a gift of time away from everything else. You're being kind to yourself.
We deal in death and dying and grief and caring for families and aftercare in our families. And so I think that, sometimes things hit you different on different days. And so we always like to have resources for our staff to step out of their offices when they need a moment, go out on the grounds, experience the gift, as Robert calls it, of time for themselves, and to help them heal through what we deal with on a daily basis. We need an outlet, and Robert's introducing us to a new outlet.
Next week, the Renaissance on Cherokee Street, causing a thriving business community. Plus, a performer in his 20s whose favorite tunes are from 100 years ago. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.